Hello, this is Claudia. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I create alcohol ink flowers with Zentangle inspired details on a hot foiled background. If you want all the details about the supplies I'm using, check out the links in the description box below. I'm starting with a 5" by 7" piece of Yupo paper. I squirt some 91% isopropyl alcohol on it, then start adding drops of alcohol ink. I'm using Altenew Ruby Red, Autumn Blaze, and Citrus Burst alcohol inks. Make sure to only use alcohol inks in a well-ventilated area because of the vapors from the evaporating alcohol. The alcohol ink part of this video is all about recovering from mistakes. You can see that I put way too much alcohol ink on this background, and it quickly turns into a swampy red mess. Mistake number 1. No worries. Because Yupo isn't porous, I just grab a paper towel, soak it all up, and start over. Again, I apply some 91% alcohol, then add drops of alcohol ink, using a lot less this time. I use the Tim Holtz air blower to move the ink around, adding a little more alcohol here and there. Altenew alcohol inks are also the refills for their alcohol markers, so I get 2 uses for the price of 1 with these products. When I like how it looks, I stop. Now for the second mistake. I tried a technique with this beautiful background that didn't work. If this happens to you, don't throw it away because you can always rework Yupo alcohol inked backgrounds. You can see that this beautiful background is really splotchy now. So, I decided to just make it uniformly splotchy. I apply some alcohol to the felt of a Tim Holtz mini applicator tool, and I just pounce it on the background wherever I see areas that need to be more splotchy or areas that have harsh lines that need to be softened. I'm using the sparkled die set to cut flowers from this reworked alcohol ink background. I tape down the die so it doesn't shift during cutting, and I place a piece of printer paper over the alcohol ink background to keep my cutting plate clean. Now that the flowers are cut, I'm going to stamp them with the sparkled stamp set. Since I am stamping 4 flowers, I place the die-cut background in my MISTI stamping tool to use it as a positioning template. I line up the sparkled flower stamp in the template, then pick it up with the lid of the MISTI. I apply a little adhesive to the area, then put one of the die-cut flowers into that same cutout. I'm stamping with Altenew Permanent Black ink. You definitely need to stamp with an ink that is meant to be permanent when stamped on a non-porous surface. StazOn is another ink that would work well for this. I stamp each flower 2 times to get a nice black outline. The ink doesn't soak into the alcohol inked background, it sits on top of it, and it won't really be permanent until I heat set it. This is the reason I die cut the flowers first. That stamped image is sitting on top, and I didn't want to accidentally smear or damage it. I recently took the Altenew class Zentangle for Card Makers. Zentangle is a drawing method that uses structured patterns called tangles. You learn the patterns, then combine them in your own way to create drawings. This method is perfect for me because I am not a good drawer, and having patterns to follow makes drawing so much easier. I'm really liking using the die-cut outline as the positioning template. You can see that it's working really well for positioning these die-cut partial flowers as well. Since the outline image of this flower is pretty simple, I decided to add some Zentangle inspired details. I'm using the tangles Pepper and Mirth as my inspiration. Both these tangles have lines that go from the outer edge of the image to the center, and the lines have a heavier weight toward the outside. I'm going to do something similar on my flowers. I'm using a Pigma Micron 01 black pen, which is the pen typically used for Zentangle. You can use any pen, as long as it is permanent or marked archival. A thin line Sharpie would also work for this. I locate a feature on the outline of the petal that I want to use. Usually, it is a little valley or an indent. I think about how I want that petal to curve, then draw a line from the edge toward the center. I go back to the beginning of the line and add a little V shape to make the line more interesting. Usually, I start the line at the outside edge, then draw it in toward the center. But with this partial flower, it's a little bit easier to start at the center on those cut edges and draw toward where the stamped outer edge would be. Be careful not to put the side of your hand down on the image. The pen lines are still wet and you could smear them accidentally. Now that I have shown adding these Zentangle inspired lines to one of the flowers, I am going to be speeding up the video so you can see how I do the rest of the flowers. Just like for the first flower, I find a feature that I want to use, like this deep V, and I draw a line down toward the center, and then add some heavier weight at the beginning of the line. I find the next feature that I want to use and draw another line. I want it to be similar to the first line, but I don't want it to be identical, and I don't want it to be parallel. I just continue around the flower, adding as many lines as I like. I really just try not to think too much and just let the lines flow from my hand. It's good to do this rather slowly, actually, to take some time after each line that you draw to look at the image and to just see where you think it needs a little bit more detail. I have sped up this part of the video to 8 times the original speed, so certainly don't feel like you need to draw anything this quickly because I sure wasn't. You can see that I am frequently turning the flower, and when I'm drawing the lines, I'm always drawing them from the top of the flower down toward the center. One of the things that Zentangle teaches is you should always be turning your work so that it's in the most comfortable position for you. And for me, the most comfortable position is to draw these lines back toward myself each time. It really allows me to get a consistent line, and it really helps my hand get into the groove of just making these flowing lines. Every now and then I check a flower that I've already completed. I like to make the lines on each flower unique, so I check to make sure that I'm not doing the same thing over and over. Since I'm taking the time to add hand-drawn details onto these flowers, I just think it makes it a little bit extra special to make each flower a little bit different. I'm finishing up the last few lines on this fourth flower, and I'm thinking that I want to do something to the centers of the flower because they're looking pretty bare. For the centers of each flower, I'm using the Tangle Tipple as inspiration. Tipple is just circles, or orbs in Zentangle terminology, drawn very close together to fill a space. The orbs can be all the same size, or they can be different sizes. I'm just drawing pretty small, uniformly sized orbs to fill that center part of each flower. Now that I have finished these tangles, the lines that were stamped around the flower centers seem too pale. So I just darken them up a little bit by going over them with a pen. When the flowers are done, I heat set the ink just like I did after stamping. Now that the flowers are done, I'm working on the background and the sentiment. I chose this Altenew Exquisite Marble hot foil plate because I think the marbled lines echo what I did with the added lines on these flowers. I'm using Spellbinder's Glimmer hot foil in black and Hammermill Premium Color Copy 100-pound cardstock. My Gemini foil press machine has been preheating and is ready to use. I place the die on the preheated platform, cover it with the top plate, and start the 20-second timer. When the timer beeps, I lay the foil on the die, then the cardstock, and then the top plate. I carefully remove the very hot sandwich and run it through my Gemini Junior die cutting machine 2 times. I remove the top plate and lift off the cardstock, but I don't pull the foil off until the cardstock has cooled off. I trim the marbled background to 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. I don't know where the footage of making the card base went, but I made a 4 1/4 inch by 5 1/2 inch card base and adhered the hot foiled marble piece to it using my ATG tape gun. Now I'm making a black hot foiled thanks sentiment using the Sweet Sentiments hot foil plate set and the coordinating dies. I follow the same hot foiling process as I did for the marbled background. I put the thanks die on the preheated platform, let it heat up, then put the foil on it, always colored side down, shiny silver side up, cover it with the cardstock and the top plate, and run it through my die cutting machine. I do always love the great hot foil reveal. I die cut the hot foiled thanks word using the coordinating die, and then I think that I want the sentiment to have a little bit of dimension, so I cut 2 more blank pieces using the same die. I stack the thanks layers and glue them together using Gina K Connect glue that I've put into a needle-tipped bottle. Now that all the individual components are done, I am ready to assemble this card. I arranged the flowers on the card front in an arc that kind of mirrors the marbled lines on the background. I've decided to pop the flowers up, so I apply Altenew Instant Dimension foam tape to the back of the 3 flowers. I had no idea how I would arrange the flowers when I made them. Usually, I like to finish the flowers first, then play around with the arrangements to see what grabs me. In this case, the flowers seemed too large to make a central cluster, so I started thinking about a diagonal line, then finally settled on a curved diagonal arrangement. When I get to the 3rd flower on the bottom left corner, I kind of position it where I think I want it to be, and then I trim it to fit the corner of the card. Once I have the foam tape on the back of all of the flowers, I adhere the corner flowers first, using the Altenew scoring board to help me line up the edges of the flowers with the edges of the card. This is a trick you'll see me do in just about every video. For me, it has saved so much time in rework and trimming and fixing all the times that I didn't get things on aligned quite right. Once the corner flowers are adhered, then I stick on the center flower. I choose a location for the thanks sentiment. I like it about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of the card and kind of overlapping the flowers a little bit. I have to raise up the right side of the sentiment to be level with the flowers, so I put bits of foam tape under the ANKS and then adhere it to the card front. Well, I really packed a lot of techniques into this card. Alcohol ink mistakes, die cutting, stamping, Zentangle drawing, and hot foil even. I really like this card, and I hope you do too. Thank you so much for joining me today. All the supplies I used to make this card are linked below in my description. If you enjoyed this Alcohol Ink Flowers card, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more card making tutorials. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you back here soon.